episode 18 of Queer on El Paso, Free to Be. Months before the Texas legislature convened this year, dozens of anti-LGBTQ House bills were introduced by Republicans. Many of these House bills will move forward, and unfortunately, some may become law.
At the top of the list are bills that move to erase same-sex education and further disenfranchise transgender citizens of Texas. In this episode, we talked to Dina Perez with the El Paso chapter of the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance and Amber Perez with the Borderland Rainbow Center about the surge of legislation in Texas.
We also offer guidance about what each of us can do to help counteract the anti-LGBTQ tide that is washing over our country.
Before we go to our interviews, Queer on El Paso covered a protest held on February 5th at San Jacinto Plaza, which brought together people from all walks of life who rallied against Project 2025 and the current administration. We will be playing excerpts from this protest throughout this episode. Videos are also available at www.queeronel.com.
Free to be what you want, free to love who you need, free to be what you want, free to love who you need, free to be what you want.
We need to resist. Woo! And we need to make sure that we check this motherfucker.
Yeah! You got the right to be free.
Our guests today are Amber Perez from the Borderland Rainbow Center. She's the executive director. And Dina Perez, no relation to Amber, but Dina is the president of the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance El Paso chapter. Dina, Amber, thank you for talking to Queer on El Paso.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
You know, to begin, we are facing some very interesting political times. There's no surprise to anybody. And so we sent you all a copy of some research that we did in terms of pending House bills that are being introduced that may go into committee, that may become law. And there are no short number of them. It is a long list. So we culled down from literally hundreds to about 50. Mm-hmm. And then we since kind of categorized the ones that we thought were particularly interested in the LGBTQ community. No surprise that 14 of them dealt specifically with gender and the transgender experience, and either limiting that or inhibiting services for them. And then a large number of them, 16 of them, dealt with education. Mm-hmm. Education in terms of the indoctrination of Christian values. Really, there's no nice way of saying it, but they're wanting to do that. So that's kind of the overall theme of this particular episode, is that we want to talk in general terms, even though we will have the specifics on our website, queeronel.com. In general terms, some of the things that we're facing as a community, what you're seeing, and what we can do to help fight this before it becomes even more of a problem. So again, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit right now. Let's start with you, Amber. Tell me a little bit about your take on the pulse of the LGBTQ community here in El Paso.
So right now what we're really seeing, we're seeing two different kind of things going on. One is the undercurrent of fear, right? And then we're also beginning to see this feeling of wanting to do something. It doesn't necessarily have a direction yet, and that's something that we're trying to help with as well. But for sure, there is a lot of fear. We're seeing a lot of people trying to make plans to leave the country. In fact, we have been advised by other partners throughout the state to get your passports in order, just in case. So we've told our community that, but that is really one of the biggest things, it's fear.
It's interesting. We talked with some people at the rally. There was a rally, and I'm not sure who organized the rally, yesterday's rally, but it was kind of like a social media viral thing. And so there was, I don't know, maybe 150 people, 100 or so people. And that was on February 5th at San Jacinto Plaza.
I'm here protesting because I really do believe that the administration that's in office right now is destroying my nation. They're destroying my country. It is the queer people. It is the trans people. It is our right, our liberty to live as we want in this country. It is the migrants that built this country. It is the women who built this country. So to come in and to say that migrants have to go, that women no longer have a voice, that trans people do not have the right, the fundamental right to be who they are, that is the most un-American shit I've ever heard. So the only way that we can change that is to stand up. And we have to start coming up with a plan. Because you know what? Me having to get my citizenship in Mexico because my mom was born there, and having to prepare my passport because I'm that scared, I'm that scared. And that, again, the fact that I'm a veteran, I served and I have to run. What the fuck is that?
And some of the people we talked to were actually talking about getting their passport and leaving this country. Dina, from a real estate perspective, have you seen anything, or have you seen people being fearful of buying a home, or probably wanting to sell their home, or in general in the community? What are your thoughts?
So since the election, I've had a few families queer migrate to New Mexico, which I've helped from the center of Texas and move over to New Mexico. A lot of people are now fearful in those areas that are just Hispanic overall, not necessarily part of the queer community, because they're afraid of just being deported or even gathering in larger groups or something for that fear. So at this point, I mean, it's twofold. It's being Hispanic, being part of the queer community that's adding more fear into all of this. You see things like in our government websites where the T has been dropped, and now it's just LGBT, and so it's like, what direction are they going? So it's that whole shock and awe. They're frozen. They're stuck. They don't know what to do, and it's scary out there.
What are your thoughts, Izzy?
Well, I think that my thoughts on all of this onslaught of bills and is a vilification of the community, and I think that the larger idea of it is to distract the populace from other goings on in the administration, from bigger laws, bigger deconstruction things. I think that it's easy to throw the queer community out to say the wolves and say, oh, look at these bad queer people, while meanwhile they are taking away and re-legislating all of these people's lives. And while they're focused on the bad LGBTQ people, or as they see the bad LGBTQ people, that their rights are going to be stripped from them. And so I think that's a primary focus of this plan.
I think they're taking advantage of the education of a lot of the older citizens. They were indoctrinated to believe the vilification of transgender people, to distract from the fact that they're going to get rid of their Social Security. They're going to get rid of Medicare. Things like they're going to strip funding from all of those things. They can always
retire at the Gaza Strip. Some beautiful property in the Gaza Strip in about 50 years. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, I hear my parents say, well, that's our money. We paid into that. It's like, okay, you go tell them that. What are you going to do when it's gone?
It's interesting because I think that I've heard a lot of talking heads talking about, look, the people that have voted for them have a rude awakening coming, and we're not making any claims of being impartial here. This is simply a Democratic podcast.
Not the time for us to be complicit. When we call our Veronica Escobar and we let her know we need them impeached. Rights, women's rights, abortion rights, LGBTQ rights. I stand here for my daughters, for their health care and their pregnancies, for my daughter going to college. We set an example. I'm Gen Xer here. I've done my duty with my children, but I worry for the future.
Yes.
Yeah. The border did not close when my mom crossed.
And our enemy are the Republicans, because of all of the laws or the House bills that we studied, every single one of them was introduced by a Republican. And it's following the party line. And to go back to what you're saying, is not only do they vilify the LGBTQ community, but the immigrant community as well. Yes. And here in El Paso, that is a huge makeup of the fabric of this community. What are your all's thoughts on that? How are we aligned, the LGBTQ people and the immigrants? How are we similar in this particular political arena?
So I think that's a super excellent question. So as the center, we have always been involved in immigrant rights. We've always been involved from like helping serve food to making food to advocating for migrants. In fact, just recently we helped put together a group of organizations to have a rapid response to the current crisis, right? Because we're siblings is what we are. We're all one family. We're one community. And one of the things that people try to do all the time is separate us. We see that with the dropping of the T in the LGBTQ plus community, right? They're dropping the T. They're trying to divide. And you can't divide us because we are all one like marginalized group of individuals whose rights are constantly being questioned, like whose we're being vilified constantly, right? And so there is a siblinghood, right, with other issues such as like migrants and women's reproductive rights and things like that. And so we're tasked with the responsibility to stand up for them the same way that we hope that when things are being attacked, when we're being attacked, that they will stand with us as well.
Right. A lot of it is the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and unfortunately we're all put together. But I think you're right, Amber. I think that we've always had an affinity in terms of being minorities. What about women? Do you know? But from a women's perspective also, there are another group that are facing extreme measures when it comes to limiting your rights as a woman. What are your thoughts there? And is there should all women, immigrants, and gays get together? I think that's kind of what we're leaning towards. So that I think that it should backfire on them in some ways, in that we number too many for them. If they want to go after us individually, together we're a little bit more powerful. What are your thoughts on that? So on a personal level, it scares the heck out of me because, as a gay woman, as a lesbian, growing up in the 80s, I was used to being closeted and slowly but surely have been able to come out. I have a 4-year-old daughter, though. And my 4-year-old daughter, of course, doesn't have as many rights as I did in 1986 when I came out. Not just that, but I also have a niece who's 22, and she's working in the medical field. Now she just got her RN. But what happens if that...
I am protesting, to defeat the overall fascist regime that's happening. I would say my passion project in this is the right to bodily autonomy. As a student midwife and women's healthcare worker for a long time, I see a really dark path if this continues.
Person gets pregnant. What happens if they did not decide to have an abortion, but they decided to move forward with it and God forbid their pregnancy goes sideways? What then? What rights are you looking at now? It's scary to think that that people probably, divorce, they wouldn't be able to get a divorce if they're in an abusive relationship. Mm-hmm. These are scary things. As an LGBTQ lesbian, I'm fortunate to be in a good relationship with my wife and everything, but man, there is, I deal with clients all the time, different types that things go, a different direction. Their plans go a different direction. What are the protections for women at this point? Where do we go from here? We need to stick together, whether we come from a migrant community or an immigrant community or a queer community or whatever. We are all being threatened one way or another.
Sissy, it doesn't even have to go so far as you choose to have a child. You can have an illness where the treatment is medicine that they use for abortions or, DNCs, things like that. I could be bleeding out even though I've chosen to not have children and I can't get treated. Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's those kinds of things that are scary because we don't know. It's not like we're like, oh, we're going to choose this healthy uterus, in the drop of a bucket, things can change.
Right.
I have a 22-year-old son, and we were having this discussion, and when in my 30s I had to have a DNC. God forbid if I had to have a DNC right now, and it was a DNC not because of, it was just basically a medical procedure that I needed to get done, if I had to get that done today, what are the questions that are going to be done? Mm-hmm. How invasive would it be? Through the paperwork or
on top of the fact that they're scraping out your uterus.
Exactly.
It's because it's not invasive enough. Let me appease you as well.
Violate you emotionally.
And I had to have these discussions with him because he too was listening to people like Joe Rogan and so on, in which he's cut out. But because his Twitter friends have listened to them, and he's like, oh, okay, what is this about? And so we have these open discussions, open dialogue, and now he's starting to see things in a different perspective because we're having that open dialogue.
It's interesting because, Izzy, you had talked a little bit before we started recording about how you came across an idea that, if a woman is anti-transgender, then is she anti-woman? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, my thoughts are like the Christian right women who fall in line and think, oh, transgendered people are badly. My fundamental question to them is, transgenders are celebrating femininity. So really, what you're not accepting or not purporting is to support women, because you see it's wrong for a male to emulate and to celebrate being a female. So what you're doing is going against the feminine mystique or the feminine aura or those kinds of things. And so you see how in a patriarchal type society that plays right into them. You're falling right into line. So by denying somebody the right to want to emulate you, what you're really doing is saying that you can't be us, because we're only allowed to be.
Why are you protesting today?
Because I think the current administration is definitely going for the whole LGBTQ community, and we cannot allow this to happen.
Be this.
Which, interestingly enough, because you were talking specifically about Christian women that might have issues with transgender people, is also not very Christian. I asked Ceci for permission to talk to about the story that her mother shared with me. One of her clients, Ceci's mother is a devout Catholic and very Christian and very tries her best to be a very good person, and she came across this one client of hers whose child is transgender, and that woman kind of disowned her child. And Susan, Ceci's mother, said, how dare you do that? That is your child. There's nothing more un-Christian-like than to not accept your children for who they are. So it's always interesting to me that at the very fundamental beliefs of Christianity, we've ended up so far away to where we're hating and villainizing other people. How does Christianity affect the political scheme right now? Amber?
In every single way, and it shouldn't. And that's, I think, one of the biggest issues. We're seeing a movement that has been in place for probably decades, right? It has been decades in the work. And we can go back to the Republican think tanks, right? Or the far right. We can even name it as like a Christian think tanks, where they were trying to figure out a way to reach people and to change people's minds. And actually, if you do some research on it, it actually went through education. It went through the universities. Super fascinating stuff. In fact, the stuff that they're accusing other people of doing, right? But we see that all the time. But right now we're seeing basically the pandering of the Republicans, right, to the Christian nationalists specifically, right? We're talking about fundamental evangelical Christians. We're not talking about your everyday Christians who are just like, hey, I go to mass on Easter or whatever, right? We're talking about people who want this country to be a specific version, right, of what they believe is true, who are twisting their own holy text to to back up these twisted ideas. And so they are literally going in and influencing all of our politics, all of our politicians, all of our legislation, and not through just like their ideology, but through money, through real money, and sitting there saying, you know what, we will give you money but you need to do what we want you to do. And so we're seeing that literally today. I was talking about this earlier, that there was some sort of like exec order being done. It's not an executive order, but it was a directive to create this like anti-Christian bias task force, which is basically to make sure to get rid of anti-Christian bias at every level. And that's a direct violation of the separation of church and state. But this is what they wanted, right? And so they have literally used religion to get these people elected throughout the country, right, to do this. And what's even worse is that so many people, and I'll share, like, our local party has gotten calls from people who are religious and who are like, hey, this is not what I voted for. It's like, well, yeah, it is. This is literally what you voted for, right? And saying like, well, what are you doing about it? It's like, well, they are doing what they have always been doing, which is what we have all been doing, right? Is trying to educate, right? Because one of the things is that people don't understand that when you have specific ideologies, you're not necessarily sitting there trying to beat somebody into submission and say, we are right, we are right. What we're doing is saying, hey, these are the facts, right? Like, this is civil liberties. This is a human issue, right? Does this align with who you are, or is this other part? Is this who you are? And 9 out of 10 times you'll be like, no. This stuff over here, where it comes to like being anti this and anti that, like they don't understand at some point in time that when you say, we want all of those people dead, they're like, well, no, they're not going to do that. Well, exactly. Yes, they are. That is.
Why are you protesting today?
I mean, we're at a crossroads right now of true fascism in this country. I mean, they're rolling back rights for everybody. And so, yeah, we got to get out, get our voices heard. And, I mean, bringing the kids out is the best way to, ensure the future generations to be active and involved in politics.
Exactly what they're going to do. When people tell you who they are, believe them, right? But now, like you said, to speaking to your point, where they're like, there's this rude awakening that's going to come. It's not going to come, it's here. Right. We're watching this. Yeah. And we're watching people in real time. I saw something out of Florida where Venezuelans were talking about the fact that, we feel used. And I don't want to make this political. And we're like, girl, you were used. They used you for your votes. They lied straight to your face. It's like there's only one party that does that, right? And these are facts. This is not biased. This is not partisan whatsoever. These are facts. It's like if a certain candidate tells you, we're going to protect you, and then the next day doesn't, that's a fact. They didn't do it. That is not being partisan at all. That is using your eyes to see what's actually happening.
Right. Interesting today is, while we're recording, it's February 6th, and this morning Trump spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast and talked about his Christian values and how we need to preserve Christianity and have that influence more of American culture, which it probably goes without saying to our audience that is the biggest hypocritical thing that anybody can say.
Well, does more marriages mean you're holier?
Yeah. Or more prostitutes. I mean, Mary Magdalene was a prostitute. So really, Trump is very cross-slapped. Yes. But isn't that interesting? But again, he's happy to represent that side of the Republican Party, of the very far right, when in reality he will know for a fact, based on his actions, not on my opinion or your opinion or anybody's opinion, what he's done with his life is the furthest from Christian as one could get, as if you want to judge somebody that way, if you're so inclined. So here we are talking about Texas legislation, and quite a number of them are dealing with making the 10 Commandments, mandatory in schools, and not teaching sex or any type of alternative education, really, other than what they deem is appropriate based on their Christian beliefs. Dina, you're a mother. Tell me what you think of that.
It's just hypocritical. It's hypocritical all the way around. I mean, I remember as a child, my grandmother was a very strict Catholic, and we had she had 10 kids, and out of that, 2 of my uncles went to the seminary, one of my aunts a nun. We were at the rectory helping and everything, and in the restroom of the priests, there's a stack of Playboy magazines, and I was 12, 13 years old. And I'm like, how do you
can't write this. You can't write this.
Right?
You can't make it up.
Right. It's just so hypocritical. My past, my former job position or my former profession was a funeral director. I would pick up priests to and take them to the church, or if they, I'd take them to the cemetery and so on. You don't know how many times I would pick up priests at their rectory or whatever, knocking at their door, who were buzzed, who were drunk, who were hung over. There's so much hypocrisy in religion all the way around. I mean, there really is. The way I see it is, teach your children between right and wrong. Teach your children what is good and what's bad. Help them develop their kind heart by you being kind yourself. Mm-hmm. The way I live my life and the way it's in my house is that as long as you're not hurting anybody physically, you're not causing harm on them, you were a true Christian. You were a true, believer of a larger, being of a universe that will love you back.
It's interesting that you say that, because you said as long as you're not hurting anybody, then we're doing our parts as citizens just to try and get along. A huge number, I think by my inaccurate probably count, 14 or more proposed House bills have to do with transgender rights. And, the Republicans would have you believe that the transgender community is 60% of our community or something. We're talking about a very small percentage of people. And honestly, these experiences that transgender people are going through, it affects nobody else but them. Mm-hmm. And their family, but that's their business still. And so we somehow or another are okay telling them what they can do with their bodies or what they can't do with their, trying to control that part of them, much like controlling a woman's right to reproduce. And so why I know that the answer, or I think we all agree that the answer is that we villainize the transgender people, but why do you think that's such low-hanging fruit? Amber?
Well, I think because they think that there's nobody that's going to stand up for them. That's what I really think. I think that...
It might be working, especially when you have people wanting to get rid of the T in the LGBTQ, which, is counterproductive. So, there might be some little progress there, but yes, that's right, yeah. So go on, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that what they do is they find people who they think are vulnerable, the most vulnerable, specifically the most marginalized, and something that they can other, right? And then they take that and they begin to beat it down. And what they don't understand, though, is because of the way that they are, right? Their own socialization, that we are stronger together and that we will come to each other's aid. They don't understand that. They cannot emotionally understand why, the LGB part of the community would come running to the T, right? Because their lives, that's not how they work. They only do what's good for themselves.
Them. Yes. And their immediate family. That's it.
Yeah, literally, barely, but yes, agreed. And I think that, and I've been putting a lot of thought into this, and it's, over the past few decades, we've had all sorts of stuff, affirmative action. We had DEI, and I'm air quoting this, policies that helped level the playing field, right, to create equity, right? And so what we're seeing are in these different positions of power, we're seeing people who really represent us, who really look like us. So right now they're doing this huge power grab, right? But what they weren't anticipating was the fact that all of these things that we had put in place before were going to work, that we were going to have people at the Senate, we were going to have people at Congress, we were going to have people at the judiciary level who represent us because they look like us and are going to say, not today. Right. It's we are going to fight because this is what we were made to. We literally have gone to school our whole lives to fight this moment. And I think that they thought that there's no real transgender people, right? We know that it's literally 0.01% of the population. We're going to go after them. We're going to vilify them. We're going to crucify them. And then we're going to keep this as precedent for other communities because no one's going to come. And they had no idea we would all come.
Right. I had a conversation with an old friend that I used to be kind of, somebody that I knew back in the bar, going to the bars in the 80s and 90s. And I ran into him at work, and we were talking about the podcast, and he was saying, I'm so sick of the gay community being hijacked by the transgender community. Why do they steal all the headlines? And my mouth just kind of dropped, and I said, do you not understand that, if you go after the weakest one, you're next? And one of the things I fear is that my husband and I are enjoying a legal marriage after so many years of struggle, and that's a right that is very much in the crosshairs of the right-wing people. They want to take away my right to be with my husband, Dina, your wife, and you have children. And so, I think it's really difficult. While they may call it low-hanging fruit, they kind of look at it like, oh yeah, we're going to get everybody mobilized over this particular small group of people. I think, Amber, what you said is absolutely 100% right. I think that they are not counting on the alliance that we have as being minorities. I was very impressed yesterday that not only yesterday at the rally that we're talking about immigration rights, they're talking about women's rights, they're talking about trans rights. Everybody that is being marginalized in this country was represented there in this little microcosm of 100, 150 people.
Viva Chicano movement! Viva Chuco! Hopefully the youth will continue with this fire. Join us because this is your house. The youth is going to be the one that's going to lead this movement. We just need to follow the advice of the Chicano movement elders que están aquí.
And that is what it is. It's a microcosm. I think that our jobs are to amplify that and find more allies that are understanding what they may be next. Izzy, you were talking about that age-old quote about when World War II Germany. What do you say?
Where they say first they came for the socialists, and I said nothing because I wasn't a socialist. And then it goes down down the line amongst all the people that they came for, and then it finally comes to then they came for me. So as you allow your neighbors or your brethren to be taken and and you say, oh, that doesn't affect me, it will affect you.
Mm-hmm. So currently, my wife and I, we had our daughter during COVID because gay marriage is legal and so on, and she was conceived through artificial insemination from a donor bank or from a cryobank. I am on the birth certificate. Both of us are on the birth certificate, and I never did a second adoption for my daughter because I felt seeing it on legal paper, seeing it like certified legal paper, you're good. Since then, I've had to file, hire legal counsel to get that same-sex adoption going, or same-parent adoption going, or second-parent adoption going, sorry. My wife and I are having to get all our legal affairs, medical directives, all those other things, which, and I encourage everybody to do, because in that I cannot mention her as to like if in a medical directive, my wife and mention her by name, it has to be just her name, just her name as a person. And I'm like, you would think that the protection of us being married would be there, but it doesn't. We have to make sure that everything is watertight. And it's crazy because it does that. That's also I advise the migrant community to do that, immigrant community to do that. In fact, tomorrow we're hosting a class with legal counsel on doing that, how to get your medical directives in order and estate planning and so on. And it's important that we take that, that we're proactive in doing that because we don't know what's going to happen.
To go along with that, my boyfriend, longtime boyfriend, is adopted. Okay, he was adopted at birth by his parents here in the U.S. He was born in the U.S. to a Mexican citizen. How does that affect him? How does if they get rid of naturalized citizenship?
Right.
What does that do? Does that make him a Mexican citizen? Because he was born here.
Right.
So there's all of these questions.
It's a domino effect. Going back to why are we standing up for transgender people? Because they've put our enemies have put them on the front line. But that's not the end of the line.
No, everyone else lines up behind them.
Well, and one of the things that whenever people talk, because there are quite a few people who have asked, it's like we at the center, we've really centered the transgender experience because we fully believe and truly believe that it is only when the most marginalized of us are safe that we are all safe as a community, right? But one of the things that I always remind people is that Pride started as a riot, and who threw that brick?
That's right.
It's like we pay homage, right, to those who came before us to fight for these rights, and we recognize that. And with our service today, as we stand up for our transgender siblings, we say, we remember. We will not forget.
Alma, why are you protesting today?
For so many things, but especially we need to resist to everything, especially to Project 2025. It's just outrageous. It's an appetite for destruction. That's all it is. And we need to stop them. That's why I'm saying resist. Even if we have to fight for it. And I'm willing to give up my life for it.
Yeah, and it's really disheartening. Enlighten me a little bit about this movement to get rid of the T in the LGBTQ moniker. What is that about?
Well, I think they've dropped it from federal.
Yeah, from the federal website. It's just LGB. LGB. That's all they dropped the T.
So they want to essentially erase the transgender people.
And so, this is just me thinking out loud. I really believe that they're just shooting all this stuff out there, seeing what's gonna stick. But meanwhile, it has us all distracted to see what they're doing over here. And I mean, for them to every day come up with, I mean, granted, they have a plan. It's a one-page consolidated plan, I guess you want to say. And I mean, it goes a lot in a lot of depth. But I mean, really, they're just trying to see what's gonna stick. And in that, a lot of people are getting hurt.
What they can get away with.
In the meantime,
like Amber said earlier, the checks and balances.
And what plays in the public opinion, and what that basically means nowadays is social media and Fox News. What plays is to find the scapegoats to your enemy, make your enemies the scapegoats of everything. I mean, you know, it's very clear that you know, the airline crash that happened recently was DEI hire's fault, and it is kind of like somehow by association Pete Buttigieg's, fault, under, the things that the way it was implied that they're the enemy there. It's been said that, immigrants were responsible for the fires in California. I mean, anything that could possibly go wrong in this country is nobody else's fault but the people that we're trying to eradicate.
But look at all the things that he said against people with disabilities, with Gold Star families, with, just everything that he shoots out there is so, absurd. But it turns people this way and turns people that way, that everything is going on, behind the curtain. All the bullshit is going on behind the curtain. I'm sorry if I cussed.
No, that's fine.
But, I was listening to a podcast, and I haven't read facts on it yet, but they've taken all these Hispanics and have them in custody. They don't know what to do with them. They haven't committed any crime. They're not legal. But so they've gone ahead and they've released them back into their jobs, these undocumented people. And you're like, because they have no plan. Right. And so it's like,
they're just going for the soundbite, for the headline.
And honestly, Project 2025 was intimidating. When you go through it and you read through it, you think, oh my God, these people are very systematic. But then you realize, in short order, the people that are actually behind this stuff and their logic and their thinking and their ability to actually enact some of this stuff and have it go through our judicial system and to actually be done is two different things. So there is some hope there, and that's where I would like for us to pivot. What are we doing? What can we do? Right now, today, yesterday, I as hopeful as I am as a person personally, the protest yesterday, got a little bit of traction maybe, but it's not anything permanent. It's not anything that is a marked difference. What can we do as a community, individually? You all?
I think protesting is great. However, we all have to work. We all have families to go to, and it's very hard to keep the protest going. We protest by where we shop. We protest who we support. We support agencies like the ACLU, GLAAD, HRC. We support the HRC just let go of 20% of their personnel today, I believe it was, and that's disheartening. But because they're losing money, they're losing funding, so we have to support these organizations. So that's how we protest.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, so we can only be involved as far as we can be involved, right? So I think that it really depends on the individual and the organization. Some can spend a whole lot of time protesting, going out to protest because maybe they're college kids or they're retired or whatever, and they can do that, and that's a viable form. Sometimes it's about being in the room with somebody and they say, they're like, oh, all these gay people. And you say, what about them?
Right.
How are they bothering you?
Yeah. Just like there are these moments where I think even people are testing the waters, right, to see what they can say and what they can get away with. And that's one of the things that we can do is to make our spaces safer, right, is to say, not here, not with me. Right. It's like, feel safe with someone else because you're not safe with me. And I think that being sure to reach out to your Congress people, right? Even going out to volunteer, making art is a way as well.
Art is protest.
Yeah, art is one of the things that we're trying to do at the center, and we're still working on this, is I think at our Trans Visibility Day, which is a celebration, right? We're going to be working on art pieces that people people can create, because it's so important to express these things, and it's so important to be visible. And for some people, even just being here, being alive and existing as who you are is enough.
And the other thing is, I know you all have heard about Target, like, and the Pride Association up in wherever their headquarters is, Minneapolis, that they didn't accept their money to fund their Pride, and so we have to hold people accountable. And when they, put your money where your mouth is, yes, but where's your mouth? I mean, are you speaking up for us? Now, the other thing that I have also heard is that one of the reasons Target stepped away from DEI and these other organizations is because they there's a lot of stuff going on with stocks and cryptocurrency and all this other stuff, but basically they had all these stockholders purchasing, and now these stockholders are the ones that are turning around and suing these larger companies as a shareholder or as a stakeholder in their company, saying, why do you have this? So I think there's a lot more to the story than what the media is possessing there.
It's complex, for sure. And being an ally comes at a cost.
Sure.
It's a lot more than just, putting on a rainbow flag or selling us stuff.
You know what? And here's the thing, right? And this is what I like. I'll challenge people who call themselves allies. And I'll challenge them here in this podcast, and I'll challenge them in person. It's like, you're telling me that you're an ally? Where have you been? What are you doing? It's like, because if you need me, rest assured I'll be there at 2 o'clock in the morning, whatever it is that you need, because I have that capacity, right? But where are you?
Right. I mean, obviously, even though the numbers of LGBTQ people are many, the number with allies is exponential. And our allies in our own life, and I think developing our own allyships in our own lives, in our own family, because sometimes, people, many of us, have families where some people are less than supportive and could care less about transgender people, even though, they know I'm gay, but I'm not transgender, so it doesn't matter, but it does matter.
So, we knew a local business owner here who was an ally just all over LGBTQ, and then hit a rough patch and basically left town, and what happened to everything that this person was building for LGBTQ, and then all of a sudden they get a threat about something, and then they booked it, and it was like, how many times have we been threatened? How many times have we been hurt? Yeah. But we can't run from who we are. This is who we are. So an ally needs to stand with us in wholeheartedly.
The other thing, too, is, Harvey Milk said that, we weren't going to get anywhere near what we would perceive to be gay liberation unless we all came out of the closet.
Yep.
And he was a big proponent of that, and it was scary for a lot of people. And then we kind of, despite all of the other challenges politically over the past, from the 80s and the 90s, the AIDS movement really helped force people out of the closet and called us to action. Are we there now? Again, are we at that crossroads now where, let's pretend that you have a young man or a woman that are thinking that they want to come out of the closet. In this political climate, it's probably more challenging for them to do so. And what can we do as a community to say, no, this is the time that you stand up and you get counted?
I honestly think that part of this Republican movement is the fact that there are more people openly gay. I think they're afraid that
we're gonna
the numbers
decorate their home.
Yeah.
Again, what does it have to do with
I think it's the fear of the numbers, the strength in numbers, and the same way they're afraid of becoming the minority.
Yes.
Why do they mistreat minorities? No, of course
what would be
not.
the reason
right?
behind that?
Yeah. How many times have you heard, well, I hate that they're shoving it in my face? What are we shoving in your face? We're not. You have the choice to go to a pride parade. You have the choice to, if we're holding hands at the local mall or wherever or a restaurant, we're not You're not doing anything more than
you would
what anybody else would do. You know, I work with some clients that are, quite frankly, extremely Republican and very conservative in their beliefs. And at first, I was very hesitant, and my husband was actually, because he works in construction, he was also very hesitant to say, my husband. And we had this talk. Me and Lalo had a talk and said, look, you know, you are my husband. And when you talk to one of your other guys and they say, well, my wife or my vieja or you know, my whatever, you know, you don't think twice about it. Why do we think twice about it? Why do we feel, why should I feel guilty calling you my husband? And so both of us go out of our way to say, and sometimes, going back to your shoving it in your face, sometimes I kind of do. I anybody that stops me, I'm like, this is my husband, and I do it on purpose. Yeah. Because you know what? If I were a straight man and I was introducing my wife, nobody would even think twice about it. They would, I met Ted's wife.
And that is the standard that we need to force other people to see.
And if they're uncomfortable, that's their own thing.
You can't be uncomfortable with your relationship. Like, what if, like, I'm like, I don't like you, you're both ugly. You know, like, that's not any of my business. Do you know what I mean?
And so, really, and all of this is where we, the Queer Onda staff, we were working last week on a campaign that we would like to launch. And one of the things that we landed on is, honestly, that's what we can do individually, every day, right here, right now, is just be. Be who you are. Authentically.
And own it.
And
own it.
That's what.
Do not cower to their fear-mongering.
Don't comply.
You know, don't think it hasn't crossed my mind at some point, but I am all, on my social media, I am all out on there. I mean,
one of the reasons why we invited you, Dina, is that, I know that you've been our guest before, and so have you, Amber, but, this is a different conversation, a different time, and I did notice the fervor in your social media posts, and with great concern, and and I applaud you for doing that, because there was a time when I worked with realtors in the 90s that there was like 2 out lesbians in the real estate community, and that's changed quite a bit. But then it stands to reason that there were also more challenges by selling homes to gay couples, and so I think that now is the time. Now we've turned it around to where you're not only enhancing your business by taking a stand, you're attracting the people that you probably want to ally with.
That's exactly it.
And I want the people that are afraid to come out, whether they're young, old, or whatever, to feel okay to do that.
Right.
I mean, whether they're in real estate or whatever it is, if I can do it, you can do it. And don't let any. I mean, I've seen real estate agents shut down completely, move their business to another state, not even get into business anymore because they don't know how to come out. They don't know how to service that part, yet they want to. It came out of the funeral business. It was very conservative, where you couldn't talk about those things because you're dealing with religion all the time in very conservative families and stuff. But here now, me being a real estate agent, I have my own platform that I can stand on, and I will service anybody, gay, straight, or bi, or transgender.
Right. Well, wait a minute, Dina, I'm sorry, but do you guys not die? Is that what, the implication is? Like, gay people don't die? That's why they don't have funerals? Like,
no, we just click our heels and go
You disintegrate into the air like that.
We go rainbow confetti.
I disappeared in a poof of rainbow confetti.
Exactly. That's how
on to the next rave party.
Yes. That to me has always just been, it's like so dehumanizing. Right. And that's where it's like, everyone deserves the same
Ceci,
treatment.
and you're a little bit younger than we are, but during the AIDS crisis, it was absolutely disgusting how the deceased gay men were treated during the AIDS epidemic.
And during this whole time, it's been bringing me back to my brother. My brother was HIV positive. He was I was 18 when my mom came knocking at the door to tell me that he had AIDS, and this was in the early 90s. Late 80s. And he went with a Southwest AIDS Committee, which was an organization that helped people with AIDS. And he started education and prevention, and he would volunteer and go to the different school districts. How he got in the school district at that time, I don't know, but he did. And then the day that Magic Johnson came out, my brother decided, hey, this is going to help me educate the entire El Paso community. I want to come out too. Though his employer knew and everybody knew that he was HIV positive, my brother came out on the front page of the El Paso Times, which I still have. And the next day, he was shunned by everybody, including his employer. And they told him, you need to use gloves. You need to wipe down everything with Clorox that you touch. You cannot use the restroom here when he got to work. He was gone within a week and moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico to live with my mom.
Heartbreaking.
That's horrible.
But he was basically forced out of this community. And that's what people are trying to do to our trans folks. But it's what people are trying to do to people that they feel uncomfortable with. And no, we need to stand firmly on where we are.
I agree completely.
That's what we hope to do with this campaign. Educate.
Right, yes. And so the campaign that we're launching is called Free to Be. And we'll ask all of the LGBTQ community to share on their social media feeds, and we'll be using different channels to kind of roll out this is where we landed, and we say, it's daunting. I think the first thing that people can do is definitely contact their political officials. There's one thing, because their voice has to be heard, and write an email, make a phone call, put a sign in your front yard, whatever you need to do on that front. But on a very personal level, I think that at the very least and the most that we can do is just be ourselves and be visible. And one of the things that I love the most is, we're not going anywhere. It's not going to happen, and transgender people have always existed through the history of humanity, and they will continue to exist. And just because we've caught your little eye and you've spotted them as a target, and right behind them are, women's rights and immigrants' rights and gay men's rights to marry and lesbians' rights to marry, and go on and on and on, no. There's too many of us. Our numbers are too great to be thrown away or put back in a closet or erased from government websites.
Right.
And it feels like a new cultural revolution has to take place. Something that I kind of liken it back to the 1960s and those eras. We might be having to come to a resurgence of that kind of activism.
Yes.
Yeah, because we've become complacent and enjoyed a little bit of normalcy, but now in our complacency, what has surged up behind all of that is more vilification. And so we need to become activated.
And that's
and we have to, because every day that goes by, they're indoctrinating more and more and more people, because they keep hearing everything. They keep hearing everything, and
we have to counteract that somehow.
Right.
Yes.
I have a friend who's an agent out of Fort Worth and stuff, and she predominantly sells to the Hispanic community that have migrated to the States. They are so fearful. She called me up yesterday and she told me that her business was horrible in Fort Worth because everybody is so scared. She said, okay, I want to have a first-time home buyer seminar. She planned it, and what people need to do to buy houses or sell their houses if they're moving back to Mexico. And people are afraid to go to it.
Right.
She's having it in a church. She's having it in a church. So I'm like, okay, let's think outside the box. What did we do at rave parties back in the day? She's like, what do you mean?
Underground parties.
Yeah, and I said, well, what do we? You go knock on that door. They gave you the address. It was actually at the next address a block over or something. I mean, what do we do? We need to all stand together, think outside the box, combat everything that's coming at us in a positive way.
Talk about painting a picture of history repeating itself. I mean, the comparisons to 1940s Germany comes to mind, of course, and the 70s with Harvey Milk, and like you were saying. The only problem I have is I don't look good in bell bottoms. No. but other than that, I'm all for reliving that spirit. And that's what's interesting, is that this generation may not have been around to understand how far we've come, but somehow or another our rights are being pecked at and taken away, and so there is a lot of fight left to fight.
Well, and I think one of the things too that we have to acknowledge is that people get tired, right? And there are people who feel very scared and they feel very overwhelmed, and it is okay to feel that way, right? That we are okay to feel whatever way we feel when we wake up that morning. With that being said, however, we can do things to make things better. We always need to be sure that people understand that it is okay to feel bad, because this is a bad time, but that it is not okay to not do anything.
And another thing is, and I know it's going to sound real fundamental, but vote. I know and have heard so many people say, oh, I'm not going to vote. It's just going to go to the right anyway, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking it's going that way because you're not voting. And you and people like you are not voting. So you need to go out and vote.
Right. Just vote. It doesn't matter who you're voting for. Just vote.
That's
At least start voting. Look at our local votes, our local elections, because those are actually the most important elections.
What's that?
I don't know if people understand how lucky we are because we have a very friendly county. We have a friendly city as well. We have friendly people in PD. We have friendly people in all these places. But that is because we have done the work to make sure that our elected officials really represent who we are as a community.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why we have to go to those places to beat them. It's really hard to beat somebody at a protest because it's hard to get there. I don't watch TV. I don't have time to watch TV. I look at social media. I listen to podcasts. I'm on audiobooks, or what is it called? Audibles or whatever. I'm on all of that stuff. That's how I get my information. So we need to meet people in those places, and that includes our local politicians. That includes our people that are business owners. And we meet them there.
Yeah.
Get them there.
That's another thing that we can take action on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been extremely disturbing and ultimately very encouraging. And we are proud to have people like you two in our community fighting the fight, and we'll fight along with you. So, Amber, Dina, thank you for joining Queer on the El Paso.
Thank you.
Queer on El Paso is spotlighting people who are bravely raising their voice against oppression, misinformation, and discrimination in this political climate. With this episode, we are launching the Free to Be campaign.
Overcoming oppression can only be achieved by action. While we represent many voices, we each have a personal story. We encourage everyone to share their story, embrace their identity, and voice their opinion to their loved ones and elected officials. Together, we must celebrate the fact that we are free to be whomever and whatever we like.
Well, that was really a great interview, you guys. What did you think?
I was really glad to hear Amber and the leadership that the BRC is taking in actions and what they're doing to outreach and to specifically assuage the feelings of fear for their constituents and the people that they serve.
Yeah, one of the things that we did in this episode, one of the things that we chose to do is to really focus on a state level. I know that there's a lot going on. We all know there's a lot going on at the national, federal level with our current administration. But, we're unique in that we're facing all sorts of different kinds of proposed House bills that affect our community in Texas. El Paso is very fortunate, and the Borderland Rainbow Center is part of that shining light in our community, as well as the political people that have, the politicians that have come to our aid and we consider allies, And so I do encourage everybody to contact your representatives and voice your opinion and really kind of take charge of our future and the future of our country, and certainly of Texas.
And I also think that Dina's perspective as a mother and in a gay marriage brought a certain closeness and personalization to the conversation about what is at stake and what families are facing.
In this uncertain times, these agencies can be helpful. And, also we will be providing for everyone a way to contact your legislators and whoever you need to at queeronda.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Queer on El Paso. We have provided a link on how to contact your representatives and a list of some of the most pertinent House bills at queeronda.com.
You can also join the Free to Be movement by visiting queeronda.com. That's queeronda.com.
For now, this is Ted,
Ceci,
and Izzy
saying act out, speak up, and
Agarren la onda, queers.